my name is Dr. Stacey Chimimba Ault. I am she, her doctor, and I am the founder and CEO of the Race and Gender Equity Project, especially since 2020 and aftermath of summer of 2020 and the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and lots of organizations making commitment. But what I'm seeing around the country is lots of organizations make commitments and promises to communities and to their employees and to doing work differently. And then it becomes difficult, and we sort of hit a wall, and we go through what is very normal in a social movement cycle. When we're talking about pro-Black, we're talking about all Black people. And that also hasn't always happened, even in some racial justice spaces, right? And so thinking about all of the ways that anti-Blackness intersects with classism, with gender oppression, with heteronormativity. As a board, in our leadership role, we always want to be thinking about both the explicit impact that we have on culture, the policies and practices, the vision, mission, core values, things like vacation policies, mental health benefits, goal setting, scheduling, hiring, right? Like those really visible aspects of an organization's culture. And then the implicit, invisible culture, the norms, values, and beliefs that drive the work that we do. White supremacy culture, resistance culture, professionalism, and the business models that we operate in. And so while there are kind of policies and practices that guide our business model, there's also implicit culture, and it's really easy to slide back into the way we've done things when things get challenging or uncomfortable. And often we don't even know we're doing that. And these norms can be individual and collective. Sometimes it just takes one or two folks within a community to have diverging views about the importance of pro-Blackness and what that means and the definitions. And if we haven't all done our kind of individual and collective work, it only takes one or two of us to throw us off as we continue to move forward with a collective vision. If we're thinking to build something that's pro-Black, we have to name the reality that necessitates pro-Blackness, right? Which is anti-Blackness and all of the individual, community, systemic, institutional harm that has been done in our society to folks that identify as Black. Racism will exist and does exist, is ordinary, is endemic. It is the air we breathe. Angela Davis says it's the air we breathe, right? And so then I would also assert to say anti-Blackness exists. It is the air we breathe, right? Because that's how racism plays itself out practically in our society. Sometimes what you can do as a board member is some learning. Sometimes what you can do in a board member is ask some questions. Sometimes what you can do as a board member is implement some new strategies, right? So I want you to don't think about it, that it has to necessarily be an action that is put in the minutes that you have to move or vote on, right? This is more about what can you do. And I'll share that the beauty of a dialogue is that I'm hoping we'll get brass tacks. And I'm hoping we'll get, I don't know, I feel like I need some more of this before I can move forward to the brass tacks. And there is no, remember where we get to be uncomfortable and we get to move through this at our pace, right? We get to listen from the inside out. We get to move away from binaries and lean into the yes and. Like, how do we continue to unpack and dismantle white supremacy culture in our organizations? And then you said sort of as well, like in ourselves. So yeah, how do we build the trust? Adrienne Marie Brown says, trust is built in small gestures and vulnerabilities, right? It's the only way that you can really build trust. In order to do the brass tacks, we have to have the ongoing conversations. Both of those things have to happen. It has to be a yes and. It's important for us to measure, and one of the measurements is how are we doing individually? in this work to develop a pro-Black center? And how then can we come together collaboratively to measure how we're doing collectively? Yeah. So sort of how do we create the time for the ongoing work of building a pro-Black center? And then how do we create the time for the ongoing work of building a pro-Black center at the board level? And then how do we do the ongoing work of continuing to unpack and dismantle white supremacy culture in ourselves? So that's kind of that sort of inside out. That's the breath cycle, right? Because we're doing it individually and we're doing it collectively. Yes, and it's also the self-responsibility. We can have all the structure in the world and we can show up to stuff, but if we're not doing the inner work, and inner work is for all of us, right? And it's the purpose. How are we as a board setting our purpose? Why is this all even important to us as a board? How do we prioritize when we don't have the time? When the time is 10 minutes, right? Or 15 minutes, how do we make sure that we use that time to do some of the things that you all talked about, right? Which was building the trust necessary, sharing time around your lived experience, your lived expertise, listening to each other, listening to others. So it can take long and can be a whole planning session, or it can be short and it can be intentional.